Hey everybody, Quadzilla here. This video I'm going to talk about the 7 mistakes that could ruin your through hike. I'm shooting this video from Chiang Mai, Thailand. That is where I am spending my time after the calendar year Triple Crown. It's a nice little pink $20 a night hotel room. So it's probably not going to be new information if you've been doing any amount of research, but I hope to bring my experience and personal, anecdotes so that hopefully makes this information stick better in your mind. Because I have hiked about 14,000 miles, seen all of these mistakes being made firsthand, and as simple as they are, they really need to be considered as you're planning your hike because they really could ruin your hike. So don't fall for the survivorship bias, because for every person that says, I went out on the trail with no training, no planning whatsoever, and I was successful, there's like 100 other people who their bodies couldn't handle the first couple 100 miles and they quit, or their minds couldn't handle it, or their gear failed, or they ran out of money, or any myriad of these things. And these people aren't sticking around on the forum, Appalachian Trail, Pacific Crest forums to answer people's questions and tell them, like, hey guys, I failed this. They've moved on with their lives. It's the people who completed their throughs, they stick around. So there's this huge survivorship bias on these internet platforms for people who didn't really prep and then succeeded, because you're not hearing from all the ones who didn't prep and then failed, which from my experience, that's much greater. People who plan and prepare and train beforehand have so much better time on trail. Like, it's really quite astounding. And most of these people that say I never trained before my hike, you'll notice they're young and they're athletic. So if you are young and you have an athletic background, you could probably skip a lot of this video. If you don't fit that category, continue watching. And before we jump into it, I want to let you know that I have started my own Thru-Hike training program. So this program covers everything from physical fitness to your nutrition to your mental mindfulness preparation, mental resilience. That's probably the biggest component, is these actionable things I touch on that you can actually practice that will reduce your suffering in your life and on the trail. And so, gear, just everything you need to know before you head out on the trail. So if you're interested in that, I'll have a link down below, and now we'll jump right into it. So number 5 is ignoring mental preparation. And you read this, as you're researching for your hike, like people say it's all mental, or it's all in your head, or it's 99% mental, or whatever they say. But then it's like a bunch of platitudes. And I found it really frustrating that there's never really any like concrete, what do I actually do? How do you prepare? Like, yes, I understand that it is, the mental aspect is what's going to make or break, but what do you actually do to prepare your mental environment? And that was what I found so interesting on my calendar year Triple Crown last year. Is I went into that after having done years of these different mindfulness meditation practices, and really putting that into practice in my life and seeing the results and the benefits. And it was like these light bulb moments, like, wow, this is really powerful, and this can legitimately help me be, less, just suffer less out on these hikes, on these really tough things. And that's what I was seeing in my life. I was able to do these really kind of extreme, difficult things that were objectively very painful, very tough, but in my mind was still, my mind was calm, my mind was at peace. And because my mind was at peace, I was able to just flow through these, not just get through them, but like flow through it with so much calm and peace, and like it completely changed the flavor of the experience. And so that's why I think, if you do one thing before your hike, well, you really need to do 2 things. You need to train physically, you need to train mentally, because it's not 99% mental. It's like, it's mental and it's physical. And the key is to use, it's just too much to go into in this video, but you need to develop awareness. You need to develop awareness of what's going on in your body. And then once you're aware of that, the sensations of like burning in your legs, once you're aware of, maybe you have anxiety thinking about hitchhiking, all of these things that you can become aware of, but then you can sit with them and disconnect that story so that, if I am climbing a mountain and my legs are burning, then I can just feel the sensation of the burning and be curious about it and say, like, hey, that's actually not that bad. It's kind of like a sensation of heat, and it's kind of a sensation of, burning, but that doesn't mean I'm in agony. That doesn't mean I have to stop. That doesn't mean I can't do this anymore. All it means is I feel the sensation in my leg, and I know that it will stop. Like, the mountain does not go on forever. So I ran a 106-mile race in 2021. That was 2 days after I finished the CDT. So I finished CDT on Thursday, and then Saturday morning I was running this 100-mile race out in Cuba, New Mexico, Dead Man Peaks, 106-miler. And by mile 85, I had started, my lungs were starting to fill with fluid.
Last challenge, climb this big fucker. I've been pretty good at climbs, but with it being harder to breathe, it's definitely more struggle. Oh my god, can't talk.
And it was like getting difficult to breathe, and my legs were just wrecked, and my feet, like every step it felt like somebody was like smashing my feet with a hammer. But even so, my practice allowed me to just be in it, and it just, every step I was like, okay, I'm here, I can feel the sensation, and even though it hurts so much, I'm still okay with this step, like, and I can take another step. And that's a space I need to be in. I don't need to worry about, if I'm in this much pain, how can I go another 15 miles? Because that's too much. I don't know how I can go another 15 miles, but I do know how I can go another step, because I can be with my sensation and take another step. I can be with my sensation, take another step. And that's what I did. And it was objectively the most painful thing I've ever experienced. And right before, like, the last few miles, I was like, I am never gonna run a 100-mile race ever again. And then I finished, and then 20 minutes later I was like, yeah, that was great, I want to do another one of these. But I ended up winning that race by over 2 hours, and 100% because of the mental resilience training, because that was 28 hours of moving nonstop through the New Mexico desert from morning all the way through the night to the next morning. And that's something that I never could have imagined that I would be capable of just a few years ago. But I was able to do it, and do it with so much peace in my mind because of these mindfulness, mental resilience practices that I had put into place in my life. So, like, that's truly what I want to share with people, because it's not only is it so profoundly beneficial for a through hike, it's just so beneficial for all of your life. So number 4 is inadequate physical preparation. So this is the big one, and this is the one where if you're not young, and if you're not young and athletic, then you need to be training, physical training beforehand. It's going to save you so much pain, and it's going to probably save your hike. So adapting to life on trail, especially in the first few weeks, can be really challenging. It's such a different thing. There's so many new stressors, and there's stressors from the weather, from the heat, from cold, from figuring out how your gear works, from trying to figure out your resupply, from like trying to hitchhike. Like it's really front loaded with new things and new stressors, and that can be really overwhelming. So you want to control the stressors that you have control of, because what's going to happen is everybody has a threshold for pain and discomfort and for stress, and once you reach that threshold, your mind's going to be overwhelmed, overloaded, and it's going to be like, that's it, we're done, we can't do this anymore. So that's people's breaking points, that's people's quitting points. That's people's mental breakdowns and sitting on the side of the trail crying. Because if you are fit, then it's not as big of a deal to climb up the mountain, and you're going to be in way less pain. You're going to be much less sore in the mornings. It just makes the experience 1,000 times better. And the other big reason to do physical training before you get on your hike is injury prevention. So the big injuries out on the hikes, they're structural. They're injuries in the bone. They're injuries in your connective tissues. Those are the injuries that take people off trail like permanently for that whole year, for that whole season. Muscular injuries, they occur, but they don't knock you out of the trail. They might take a week or two to heal, and then you can continue on. The biggest thing with like the structural bone and connective tissues is it takes a lot of time to build them up and to make them strong, and once they get damaged, they take a lot of time to heal, weeks to months. And so when you're on trail, you really don't have that kind of time, especially if you're facing weather windows like you do on pretty much every trail. So you need to make sure that they're strengthened beforehand, and that's done through going out and hiking, through weight training, through body weight calisthenics, that training that's going to toughen up your body so that you can withstand all of the impacts from just walking every day up and down mountains with the pack on your back. And again, that's why you want to keep your pack light, because every step, that weight is being transferred through your body into your knees, into your joints, into your connective tissues, and even 5 extra pounds like compounded over all these miles, like that can be the difference between being injured or not injured. Just having, a fitness routine, having a resistance training routine, it will pay off huge dividends, especially like the first 6 months to a year. You make exponentially more progress and get better results in that first year of training. It's like the 80-20 rule. Like if you train for 1 year in resistance training, you're going to get 80% of the benefits. And so, that's such huge. Like it's, I don't know what the actual numbers are, but it would reduce your chance of injury on trail. I would say 3, 4, 5, 10-fold. Like it's that powerful. So number 1, it is overpacking, and I'm not going to spend too much time on the subject because it's pretty self-explanatory. You all understand you need to take, as little as you need, but you're going to overpack. That's pretty much everybody does on every trail, and they send stuff home. I even did it last year on my calendar year Triple Crown, even though I had hiked like 9,000 miles beforehand. So I still had to send stuff home because I just brought extra stuff that I didn't need. So this is just a problem everybody has. So
there is an endless series of stairs, and I'm not even done with the first mile yet.
So the biggest thing you can do to limit this is to limit your pack size. So for like the Appalachian Trail, about a 45-liter pack is all you need. Pacific Crest, Continental Divide Trail, a 55-liter pack. And then this will vary based on your height and weight. So I hiked with Bear. He was 7'1", like 280 pounds. So he legitimately needed about a 75-liter pack. But for most people, I think 45 for the AT, 55 for the PCT and CDT is more than plenty. And a lot of people, especially if you're smaller, you can get away with a even smaller pack. And what that does is it forces you to make decisions. So you don't throw everything in the pack. Once your pack is filling up, you have to decide, what of these massive $100 resupply of food that you just bought are you going to take, and what are you going to leave behind, So these are just general guidelines that people should stick to, and just having the smaller packs is going to force you to make decisions, and then that is going to force you to prioritize what you truly need and what you don't need. And just makes a world of difference when you go out on the trail with a lighter pack. So not rocket science, nothing new, but just keep that pack low. That's every trail, biggest mistake everybody makes. Too big of a pack, too much crap when they start out.
Day 2, I just left Springer Mountain. I did about 8.5 miles yesterday. Feeling good, feeling strong. This is everything that I've hoped it would be. Having a lot of fun.
But with that said, don't stress too much on this point, especially if you're on a tight budget, because ultimately, if you are in good shape, if you have well prepared, if you know how to use your gear, if you've tested it, prepped, all of that beforehand, that will make up for not having the absolute lightest gear out there. And then like everybody gets on trail, they send stuff home, they get their gear dialed in. So as long as your pack is reasonably light and you have enough fitness, you can make it work. And as you get on trail, you get stronger, and then you'll be able to ship all of the non-essential things back home and get rid of it. And then that process of getting stronger on trail and then dialing your pack in on trail is what is going to make it much more comfortable and then make you ultimately succeed in your goals. So number 2, not testing your gear. It is amazing how many people go out on trail without ever having used their gear, and I am guilty of that as well. So last year, this is like a 8,000 mile hike, and I didn't test my gear before I went out there. In fact, I put it off so long that some of my gear wasn't arriving until like a week before I left. And so I'll share my story with that. So first night I get out there, I'm camped right before Springer Mountain. It's dropping down to like 20 degrees that night. And to be fair, most of my gear I've used in other hikes, so I know how to use most of the stuff, but I had got a quilt. I'd never used a quilt on trail before, and when they shipped me my quilt, I was like, what are these little, they looked like guidelines for tents. I was like, why did they send me tent lines? I don't need these. So I just put them in my random, bag of hiking stuff, and I didn't bring it with me. So that night, when I'm setting up my camp, I get to crawl into my quilt, and I'm used to having a sleeping bag I can just zip up, but I don't have that anymore. I'm like, oh shoot, how do I secure this quilt? Because the quilt, you have room for your legs, but the top is just a quilt. It's like a blanket, and what those guidelines are for is to wrap around your sleeping mat so that you can then clip the quilt in so that it will be like tucked in, because otherwise it's just kind of a blanket laying on top of you, and you don't have that cocoon effect that you get from a sleeping bag. And this is very important when it's really cold out. So I had to put on all of my layers and like kind of do this weird thing and try and tuck half of the quilt in and shift around a lot at night. I was still able to sleep and be reasonably warm, but that would have been solved so easily if I had spent one night out with my gear and realized like, oh yeah, I need those lines to be able to set up my quilt. And there's just lots of little things like that with your gear that it's you just need to get out there and figure it out. So spend at least one night out there with your gear so you can figure out all of the little things that you just can't anticipate. So number 3 is poor financial planning. This goes along with that survivorship bias, because you'll see online a lot, people say, oh, I hiked the trail with like $800, I can do it with $500, it's real easy. I think most of that is bullshit. It's people are just bad about keeping track of how much money they're actually spending. I have an accounting degree, so when I actually keep track of what I'm spending, it is always higher than what I think I'm spending, like to the tune of 50% higher, because there's just an incredible amount of little expenses that you're not really thinking about unless you actually sit down beforehand and like make like a really comprehensive budget and all that. And to be honest, like most people aren't going to do that. I don't do that. So you just need to, the much easier solution is to just understand that it's going to cost more than you think it is and just plan for a higher budget. I think right now, this is 2023, after all of the inflation that has hit, like $1,500 a month is kind of the threshold anymore. I know that's gonna, before 2020, $1,000 would be okay. I think now, $1,500 is kind of your bare minimum where you can enjoy your hike, you can stay in hotel rooms, you can eat at restaurants, you're not trying to pinch every penny. Obviously you can do it on less, but I think if you have the option to work a little more and bring your budget up to $1,500 a month, that is ideal. And the biggest ways to save money on trail, focus on the big things. So the big expenses are going to be your hotels, your resupplies, and your restaurant meals. So doing things like coming into town, early on a day, checking into your hotel so you had that whole day to do your laundry and all that. So Nero into town, and then the next morning, Nero out of town, sleep in, get food in town, and then go camp on the trail. So you've essentially spent 2 days in town, but if you've only paid for one night. So doing things like that can really help open up your budget. Yeah, it's that accommodations that it's getting really expensive. Like even tiny, gross little motels in the middle of nowhere are over $100 anymore. In a lot of these big resort towns on like the PCT, CDT, they're climbing to $200. It's pretty ridiculous. Like AT hostels are now $30 to $50 for a hostel bunk bed that you're sharing with people. So accommodations have just kind of gone out of control. So the more you can sleep in your tent, that's probably going to be the biggest thing that's going to save you money out there. So number 6 is underestimating your nutrition and hydration needs. And what I've noticed is once people get past that initial first couple 100 miles, their packs are now dialed in, their fitness is like adequate for the trail, yet you'll find that once they get around the halfway point, a lot of people drop off. Like, I don't know, 10-20% of people that are still out there, they drop off around that point. And I find that really interesting because in order to get that far, that means you are capable of doing the entire trail. So something is breaking down at that point. And I've talked to like dozens of people at this point when they're talking about going home, and they all kind of describe the same things. Like I'm so tired. I am not motivated anymore. I just don't want to be out there. I'm not having fun. And big ones is just they're just so tired and they have no motivation. So I'm going to read you a list of the symptoms of starvation from the NIH. So feeling tired all the time, feeling weaker, getting ill often and taking a long time to recover, wounds taking a long time to heal, poor concentration, feeling cold most of the time, low mood, sadness, and depression. So I'm pretty sure a lot of these people that are quitting around the halfway point, they're just malnourished. Like they're experiencing some of the symptoms of starvation. And it makes sense because that's, generally takes about 3 months to get to the halfway point. And that's long enough where if you're not eating well, if you're not eating the nutrition that you need, then that's the time when it's going to start catching up to your body. Because you can go for a while, not meeting your new caloric and nutritional needs, but at some point it's going to catch up to you. And so I think that's what's happening. So you really need to have like a foundational understanding of what to eat on trail, how to eat, and basically my 2 priorities, protein and calories. Like if you can get those 2 things dialed in, then the rest will kind of take care of itself. Again, it's a kind of a big subject, but if you prioritize every time you get into a town, you need to find like high quality source of protein. So like rotisserie chicken or a steak or a burger or something like that. Like eat that first before you eat your pizza or your ice cream or your other kind of junk foods that you're craving, because you don't fill up on these kind of empty carbs. Like get that high quality source of protein first and then round out the rest of your meals with the things that you're craving that might have less nutritional value. And if you do that every town, every day, you're trying to find these high quality sources of protein and then just get more calories. That takes up that solves 50-60% of the issue. And then once you're out of town, you need to be packing. It really depends on your height and your weight and your how many miles you're hiking. Do that math when you're resupplying. It takes a little bit, but just add up all the calories of all the food you're buying, divided by how many days you're out there, and then is that enough? If it's 2,000, that's not enough. It needs to be 3, 4, 5,000 calories per day, because it is difficult to catch up in towns. I know some people, it amazes me how little they eat on the trail, and then they go into a town and they're have an incredible appetite and they're eating everything in sight. So you really shouldn't have that much of that hiker hunger. Like if you're experiencing hiker hunger all the time, that means you're really have a deficit on calories, and that you need to eat more calories all the time. Like even last year, hike for 9.5 months, I didn't really have hiker hunger. Like I have a much bigger appetite, but it wasn't this like I need pizza, I need this stuff. It wasn't this, yeah, it wasn't hiker hunger. It was, I have a bigger appetite, and that's because every day I'm eating, I'm meeting my caloric needs while I'm on trail. So you need to meet the caloric needs on trail. You need to get those high quality protein sources in towns. And if you're doing that, again, that'll massively increase your chances of succeeding on the trails. Because all the symptoms I've described, I've never wanted to quit in the middle of a hike. Like the 2 to 3 month mark is when I feel the best. I think like 3 months is like a great time frame for a hike. That's everything is still beautiful. Your body hasn't broken down yet. Once you get to about the 6 month mark, you're just kind of tired of everything. It really is too much time to be out there. Your body at that point has like broken down. But 3 months, you should be feeling great. You should be feeling in the best shape of your life. You should be really feeling amazing. And if you are eating enough calories, enough protein, enough nutrients, then you will be feeling amazing. So number 7 is don't rush your start. So again, not a huge revelation, not a surprise, but this is one of the big ones that gets people, and guilty of it as well. When I started off last year, I was intending to do a bunch of 20-mile days until I got my body, conditioned and back in trail shape. And then first day, I think I did like 35 miles out to Blood Mountain, and then I paid for it the next couple of days. Like I really felt it in my body, and I was probably lucky that I didn't start off my hike with some sort of injury. And that's the real concern if you start off too fast. If you overload your body and you get some sort of tear in a connective tissue, a tear in your knees or something, or if you get some sort of stress fracture in your bones, then that's going to take weeks or months to heal, and that could just end your hike right there. So just having a plan and sticking to that plan is really important. And what that means, it's different for everybody. It really depends on your prior experience with hiking, with backpacking. It depends on your fitness level. So like finding that sweet spot, that's where it's helpful to talk to somebody that has experience on trail. Because for me, 20 miles a day with my previous experience, that was like a good pace, like not too fast, not too slow pace. But for a beginner on the Appalachian Trail, 8 miles a day might be a good pace. 5 miles a day might be a good pace. Really depends on your level of fitness. It depends on how heavy your pack is. It depends on so many different factors, but you need to figure out what that is for yourself and stick to it. And I think about 2 weeks for me is when my body will start to feel adapted to the trail and feel good on the trail. And again, this really depends on your level of fitness. The more fit you are, the faster you will adapt to trail life. So, the less fit you are, it might take you a month or two before you start feeling good on the trail. And so that's something else too. Like as you start off, it's not always going to be that painful. It's not always going to be that hard. The first few weeks of any hike is the most difficult. So that actually, big shout out to section hikers to be able to come out every single year and go through that initial pain phase and then get off the trail just as their bodies are adapting to the trail. Like that sounds really, really challenging. I prefer the through hikes where your first 2 weeks are gonna suck, and then the rest of it your body's adapted, it's figured it out, and it's not that bad anymore. So keep that in mind. The start is the hardest. Once you get past that, it gets much more smooth. Not necessarily easier, but just less bad. Less bad. So awareness, preparation, planning, discipline, those are the things that are going to make your hike successful. So just good luck to everybody out there. Our trails really are just such a gem, and it's so cool to experience the nature and the beauty, and to meet the people on the trails, and to have your adventures. So I really wish you luck and success. And I do have my training program going on now, so yeah, the links will be down below. Check it out. It will include physical fitness prep. It'll include a big component will be that mental fitness, mental resilience, mindfulness practices, actionable things, not just telling you it's all in your head, you know, those kind of practices. And then nutrition, gear, you know, you have access to me live. So whatever questions you might have. And yeah, I just wish you the best of luck and happy trails.